Okay, I've got 3 o'clock. We'll open our special session for Tuesday, January 28th, 2025. We'll start with public comments. Anyone sign up for public comment? Don't think so. No prayers or pledges on the agenda, gentlemen. Brings us to our consent agenda, items 1 through 4 on consent. Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Before we move off the consent agenda, I would like to draw your attention to item number 3. Receive and file Galveston County District Court's administrative judge order submitted by District Court Administration. Last week or 2 weeks ago, I forgot exactly when, Judge Jared Robinson of the 405th was voted as the the administrative judge for the district courts. Congratulate him and apologize to him at the same time. It's a very good, very responsible job. I've worked with Judge Robinson for a long time now, about 12 years in various capacities, and I'm sure he'll do a fine job there. And if you for Judge Robinson, just let us know. Any further comment? And we'll be through with our consent agenda at 3:01. We'll move immediately into workshop. Workshop item 5, discuss 2025 bond issue submitted by county judge. You start that.
We'll start with facilities.
Okay.
That's okay?
Great, so I'll ask Brady to come up with your council.
Good afternoon, Commissioners and Judge Henry. It's good to see you again. Tyler has a handout of the presentation. That way this time you don't have to turn around and keep your necks as you're trying to view what we're talking about. So this, as we said, is workshop number 2 in your bond planning, your capital planning workshop number 2. Today on the agenda, we're going to talk about the immediate priorities for your potential bond projects, some key considerations for these projects as you're looking at your planning and making some decisions, and then some possible next steps. So our top priorities, we've had lots of discussions since our last workshop, including, we've answered a lot of commissioners' questions, we've done some site walks with some commissioners, we've facilitated those site tours, and in those discussions we've discussed about the needs of the buildings on these site tours. They've worked with and spoken to the end users, looked at their working conditions and talked with them about their growth rate for these areas and basically those needs that they have in their situation with these buildings. They've also looked at some specialty consultants, like for the Juvenile Justice Center, there are some specialty consultants that would need to be there to help us with this build. So we've kind of had all of these events happen, and in that determination, the top priorities that have come down for us is the Juvenile Justice Center, the Dickinson Mosquito Control Building, the West County Annex, and the Sheriff Adult Probation Office. So first up is the Juvenile Justice Center. Just a little bit of a recap. This is your existing facility there in Texas City. It's about 36,000 square feet. And it includes 3 modular classroom buildings. It was originally built in 1996, and the modulars were added in 1998. We have a lovely picture of the Juvenile Justice Center there. What we are projecting, and now when I talk about cost, I want to give a caveat a little bit. This is a total project cost. So that includes architectural engineering, contingencies, specialty consultants, construction fees, furniture, it's all inclusive. So the estimated cost for the Juvenile Justice Center is $55 million. For the renovation, there's also an addition and some vocational training that was added. So this is a little bit higher than the last time that we presented. Some of the main differences are that in our last presentation, we were estimating about 40 beds to be added to the Juvenile Justice Center. This number includes 48 beds. So that it can accommodate population and legislation changes when it opens. The second is the addition of vocational training to this facility, such as welding or carpentry, so that these students and kids have something to a skill that they can learn and take away from. The end users felt like this was a very important piece of their training and their education at this facility.
Yeah, to that point, I've had discussions. I don't disagree with the concept. I'm thinking we're gonna have a very hard time getting instructors for this. So if we can tackle that issue, I put Glenn Watson on that, trying to figure out who's gonna provide the instruction for this thing.
I think Texas City ISD might currently have some sort of relationship with the center,
This Dickinson ISD.
Dickinson ISD.
Yes.
We did have a conversation with Glenn and Dink at the facility about that. They do have frequently people asking if they need vocational training. They just haven't had the space to do that. And that would be something that we would discuss with them as we go into the architectural phase of this for sure. To provide that facility and take a look at what it is that those programs could be that would be offered in those areas. He did mention welding and carpentry as two of kind of the top. So there's some exploration there I think that we can do alongside Glenn and Dink for this vocational training. Just some key considerations that you see on here. State regulations definitely drive the space of this cost. And then there's we increased a little bit for phasing and some for the unknowns, right? So when you do a renovation, there's a little bit of unknowns that may pop up. So that also is included in this cost, outside of the increase in beds and the vocational training space. And just a map here to show you, this is the Juvenile Justice Center. The big box on top would be where the new addition would go. This would include the additional 48 beds, a new kitchen facility, some training rooms for another program that they're currently offering, the JJ, what's that?
AEP, JJ,
Thank you very much. The box below would be where we would project the vocational training center to go. It would be connected. It would be also very accessible to those students and kids who are there at the jail.
Does the 55 million contemplate any modifications or remodel of the current building?
Yes, it does. It's about an 80% renovation and a 20% reconfiguration of the current
That
building.
was the last one,
Yes.
So the vocational training center is its own building, it looks like on this diagram here.
Correct. I mean, we will work with the architects to see how it can be integrated. But for right now, those would be the spaces that we would look at and put in a new addition. It would be new. It would be a new addition. There's not currently space for this at the current facility.
So these aren't just classrooms, this is a whole nother building.
Yes,
It can
which
be
is-
and it can be attached.
Which is why we have to address the instructor component.
Correct.
We're gonna look pretty silly if we build this building and can't get instructors for it.
Right.
Well, Texas City has a model vocational training facility and instructors, and so
But we don't follow, they'd have to agree to it, but that's not Texas City ISD's property, it's Dickinson.
oh, no, my only point is, if they can do it, I trust that the JJ administration can get it done. But anyway, I think it's a great, like you, I think it's a great concept, and just,
By instructors.
yeah, we just gotta,
Yeah, I think we were contemplating including it in the potential package and then exploring with Glenn and Dink on their availability and trying to see how they can put that program together over the next several months.
He said he would work on that, but he was on vacation.
Vacation last week and just said start when he's back.
And not knowing, but is that in Com's district? That's in Com's district, isn't it?
I believe Judge Every, when you spoke to him or somebody, they were talking about instructors, they would use that as an avenue to talk
Correct,
about.
but they did not have any,
Agreements, they just,
Right.
I thought maybe that would be it, yeah.
So it's at the very initial stage of this vocational center, there's a chance based on how those conversations progress over the next 6 months or so, if the voters do approve for this package, whether that gets spelled out or not, right? So I think we and Glenn have some work ahead of them to kind of get some conversations moving and to figure that out, correct?
I think it's a wonderful idea.
I think there are also some not-for-profit entities, could we do something like that? Those are probably the best ones that are gonna feed you, that are all privately funded.
But he got it,
My understanding too is that any beds that we build are gonna be used pretty much right away. So, we're building up the capacity for the center. Right now, there's kids that probably need to stay at the center, but we're having to send them home. So this will improve our, offerings to the community, the safety, and also, I think, Judge, with the training center, it'll be better for rehabilitating and getting them out of the cycle of coming to juvenile justice in the first place.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but I know there's a worker shortage that has to translate to an instructor shortage.
So
Teach them
before
how to be
Brittany-
instructors.
So before Brittany moves on, our hopes is getting direction from the court today on where we're looking at final movement on some of these numbers and the size of the project, so that way we can put the package together at probably a special meeting at Commissioners Court in the near future. And the deadline's the 14th of February for us to call the election, so we can have a complete package for the court to vote on and approve. So.
I think number one on the list is number one on all of our.
So just want to make sure we're all comfortable with this project and I guess the ask based on Brittany's firm putting this together along the work that they've done, working with Glenn and Dave. Conversation there with you is we're anticipating asking for $55 million for the build out of this.
And so the additional 16 million is for the vocational training and the 8 extra beds, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So it grew from where it was originally around 39. It's probably where again that 16. I think what happened is Brittany and her team did some more walkthroughs in Thoreau, and that grew in scope based off of their walkthroughs and identifying areas that they needed to increase from the original budget. The training facility, the vocational wing, if you talk about that on a dollar figure scale, I believe her team came up to that being in total around $5 million. The additional 8 beds came to about 2.5, so that's where we would have came back with, if we went with, where we discussed this with the other month, it would have come back at about 47.5 million, so it grew by 8.5 from the original scope. But with these additional components, that's where we sit at the 55.
Okay. Well, to Commissioner Doogie's point,
Are we being short-sighted and not, if we're gonna fill it up immediately? I thought there was some talk about actually another wing.
Well, I think that's part of the conversation, just like similar, not to the extent of the county jail, but talking to Judge Henry, who is down there annually as a visiting judge. I think no matter how many beds, if you put 150 beds in there, I think you could probably fill it.
No, that's not true. Code says that if you can send them home, you should send them home. I mean, that's the state law, that's the direction we've been. Occasionally, there's someone who I would refer to detain for public safety, but I can't. But it's not every time, we would not fill those beds up overnight.
So even with the additional, let's say, new capacity 80, you feel like it's gonna take some time for them to ramp up to getting them?
Well, the fact is our county's growing quickly, so unfortunately, that's just gonna translate into bigger numbers everywhere, from district courts, county courts, juvenile, across the board, with more population.
And the new 8-person wing that Brittany put in there is, if, let's say, some legislative changes do come down with the age of the population, that can accommodate that specialty older population. For example, I know there's been talk for multiple sessions with
Yes.
17-year-olds.
And we'll work with the architects to make sure there's a seamless future path to expanding if necessary. I think Brittany's team talked about the way you design it. You make it so that all you have to do is blow out a wall and then you can add another pod if necessary, so.
Correct.
Well, or maybe even make it where it could be 2-story or something one day. Well, how many beds do we have currently?
You have 38 beds currently. So this would more than double the number of beds that you are providing at the Juvenile Justice Center.
Yeah, I like your idea, structurally do that one level where you build on top of it if you have to.
Well, anyway, I'm for that for sure.
So we're going from 38 beds to 48 beds?
You'll be going to,
88 beds.
with the
okay.
renovation, you'll be going to 88 beds.
88 beds, okay.
Correct.
All right, good. I understand the problem. Okay.
I know, it gets a little confusing.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Create new beds. Got it.
Next on the agenda is the Dickinson Mosquito Building. Square feet. Combined with the bays and the dike, the existing dike, it's about a little over 13,000 square feet. This building was originally built in 1970. The estimated cost for the total project cost, again, this is all inclusive, is approximately $4.8 million. This number has gone down since the last time that we spoke in our last workshop. And the reason it's gone down is through our discussions, we've decided that it would be better to renovate the existing structure, the 13,000 square feet, and make that more for bays, for truck storage, and renovate the dike, and then only build the new administration section of that building. So this 4.8 million covers a new 9,000 square foot administration building, the renovation of the existing bay and truck storage, and the site development, which is the parking and the traffic flow through this property. Again, just as a reminder, all trucks on this facility have to be parked inside. It's a federal law. And much of the equipment we can always transfer to the new building, so we're having some savings there. And the reason we need to build a new admin building is because of safety for the workers. The chemical storage and the chemical fumes is not necessarily the safest for those who are exposed to it. This also allows them to have a lot more expansion into that 13,000 square foot existing structure, so that it allows them to have a little bit of growth. Now, having said that, something that we'll bring this up on the screen here. This is the current site. Because we are keeping the 13,000 square foot structure, it makes the site a little bit tight. It was tight before, but it's a little tighter now. So renovating the current structure and adding a new building means that that new building would go into the back of that property. We would build a 2-story building for this area. We would bury the electrical lines above, and we would build a 2-story building to accommodate this new admin building. All right, West County Annex. Up on my notes here too. So the West County Annex building is currently just over 6,000 square feet in your main building. It was also built, or it was built in 1981. Now we're going to talk about a couple of different options here for you guys to discuss and ask questions about. We have some estimated cost, total project cost. If you were to build a brand new building on this site, it would be approximately $8.5 million. If you were to invest in doing a renovation of the current building, plus an addition to the back of this building, you're looking at $7.1 million. So the potential investment would be just under 13,000 square feet for a new build. Think the size of your new Bay Cliff building with a little bit of a larger courtroom, a few more JP offices, and a larger constable office area. It sits, this building, and let me kind of go to the next one so you can see the parcel of land here. It sits on 5.29 acre parcel. So if you were to build new, there is definitely space to build this new building. What that would do, it would give you the opportunity to build exactly what you want and exactly what you need. It would also present the time to do a great reset on this building for maintenance. So you would get back into a strategic maintenance plan instead of a reactive maintenance plan. Now, if you were to renovate the existing structure and do an addition, there is a potential savings of $1.4 million if you select this option. Now, having visited this building probably no less than 10 times in the past couple of months, I want to bring up some concerns that we have about doing a renovation, just for you to think about. The first is that this building is 43 years old, which means it's ending, or near ending, its life cycle. So what that means is as you go in to renovate this building, that it will be, it could possibly turn into a full demolition. It's a major renovation that could possibly turn into a full demolition. A good example that we have right now in the county of that is the Mental Health and Wellness Building, where we started this renovation project, and then it quickly turned into a demolition and a new build project, bumping that budget up to $1.8 million more than what the intended, or what the budget was. So that is a concern that I have as you start breaking down these walls. The layout currently doesn't function very well for its end users, so we would have to completely renovate that, and that is a concern that I have with.
So you're projecting that that may happen?
It is highly likely that that would happen. And that's why I wanted to bring that up, because those unforeseen costs of ripping into walls bringing things up to a new code, changing the elements of how things were built in that building from 43 years ago. It's a high probability that you would end up back at your, $8.5 million budget for a new build.
And this is why you think the cost for the new build is fairly close to the renovation and addition? Because of the
Yes.
building's current condition?
Correct, and there are other two parameters, thank you for your question. When you're doing a renovation and an addition, you have to consider phasing costs. So where do those people who currently work in this building go to during that renovation period? So that would bump your budget cost as well, which is accounted for.
Isn't that the same case with rebuilding?
Well, we would potentially be able to build a new building behind and still allow them to work in their current facility.
Like we did in Bakeland.
Correct, like you did at Bay.
Just continue using the building until the other one's ready.
Right, and then we would demo that and finish out the site development plan, which is the other key consideration for why it's only 1.4, maybe not a bigger savings that you're looking at here, is that the site development stays the same. The costs are exactly the same for parking, pavement, site lighting, secure parking. Those are all very expensive features. So you can potentially save 1.4 with those added concerns as you're deliberating between the cost of that. I just want to make that note.
So if you build a new building, what are you gonna do with the old building?
Tear it down.
We would tear it down.
And that's included in the cost?
That is included in the cost.
I think, seems like it's in pretty good shape to me.
Yeah, but I mean,
Facilities has done a great job keeping that building up to snuff. They really have. However, it's 43 years old, and by the time we finish doing this, it'll be 46 years old or so.
I was surprised when someone told me that building was 43 years old.
Yeah.
Walking through there.
They've done a good job maintaining it.
Yeah, I think so.
However, like you said, you don't know what's behind the walls.
Correct. I can tell you that the way things were built 43 years ago and this type of structure that it is not the same. So once you get into the walls, there are lots of unknowns and unforeseens.
One of the things that's important to point out too is Brittany and her team doing the work they're doing. We haven't had an architect come in and design and lay anything out yet on a complete square footage. So where Brittany's coming from is working with the end users, the departments and elected officials. I think when we actually get the architects here and build something out, we could have a smaller footprint than what she's estimating with the budget costs as well. So there's a potential where I think this is coming in at under 13,000 square feet. You could find this to be closer to 10,000 square feet at the end of the day when we actually have a design firm design it out and build it, which would bring down your budget too.
True.
So and that goes for all the facilities that they're presenting and working on, right? And so
That's true, but then again, you do have to consider what it says here, is that this is the fastest growing area that we have.
Correct.
So,
yeah, I'm
do we
just
grow
talking
that
about
much? I
some-
don't know.
I'm just talking about some requests that get made
Well, I
compared to
got you.
build out typical
I'm
facilities
with you.
that might not
yeah,
serve.
my gun range in the back.
Yeah, might not.
Yeah, that
well,
might
no,
not-
that's right.
Yeah,
Things that might not otherwise survive scrutiny from the court here.
I got you.
well, doing the math in my head, which is always dangerous, that's less than 0.5% of the total amount we're looking at. So I think for my bond planning, we ought to plan on making it a new building. That's my vote.
Yeah,
We're not voting, but, okay.
I prefer, if
That's
it's that close in
speaking.
price, I prefer the new build.
New build.
I do want to say, Brittany, thank you to your team on scaling back some of the original requests of the end users, because had it been, much more expensive to go new, I don't think I could have been behind that, so.
Absolutely.
It sounds like there's some room to scale back even more when the
It's
architects.
a possibility.
I think on all the projects you'll find that,
Sure.
and we won't dig into that until we bring an architect firm in to work on it.
Right.
And then, of course, any funds that don't get spent on this project, go back to you guys to handle.
Sure.
To use for
Yes, there are
other
funds
purposes.
left over, yeah.
Correct.
Usually
We haven't
when
experienced that before, but I guess there's a first.
This is the same basically as Bay Cliff.
Correct, it's basically Bay Cliff, but there is a larger courtroom, and there are a few more offices for the constable and JP's office, because they actually have larger staffs.
So you pretty much have your.
Well, Bay Cliff
Yeah.
never gets built out to house all the constable's office, so
Right.
it's bigger in that aspect.
Correct.
Cool.
The last capital the Sheriff Adult Probation Office. Again, we're gonna present a couple of different options to you and maybe talk through some of these options. The first is to build a brand new 23,000 square foot building. This would be at $12.8 million. This does not include land. This would be built on existing land that the county owns. The second option would be $9.9 million to possibly purchase an existing building somewhere and then renovate that building. Some of the key considerations that we can talk through first is the purchase price, of course, of this existing building. You may not get it for as cheap as you would like, it may be more expensive, so those are considerations, of course, for the existing building and the land. And then also some of the unknowns of that existing building would be, coming out in inspection. For example, if you go with an older building, there could be cost associated with the age. It could be vacant for a long period of time. You probably would need to look at your plumbing. All the inspections that you would normally do, you'd have to bring it up to code. So there are some unknowns with with purchasing a building and then renovating that versus building new on some existing land that you currently own as a county.
So we're looking at, Paul Hopkins is working with us on looking at two pieces of property, one in Dickinson, one in Texas City, as you all know. And then with that, talking to Judge Henry, I just had Brittany price out if it was a new construction and that piece of property we own near OEM, just to have a figure, right? As from a standpoint of looking at the investment, what the total cost would be. So I think I just wanted to present those different options to you as we talk about it, right? So we haven't committed to purchasing any building since we have two options available to us versus that land that we already own near OEM, which was what, prior to?
That's before my time.
It's been vacant, yeah, so that land just east of the emergency management complex is our.
I think it was a sheriff's building, though.
Is that a sheriff's
Pretty
building?
sure it was.
So, just two different options, obviously less expensive to potentially purchase an existing facility, renovate it versus brand new, but the difference is it's not a 20 or 30 or 40-year-old building, right, so.
Correct.
But be aware that when people find out what it's going to be, they'll be happy about the sheriff and not happy about the adult probation. So you'll hear from the community if you're putting it in the community somewhere.
Yeah, and this would be the main adult probation office, right, which is currently housed in Texas City in that annex. We'd be relocating them because we've been talking about relocating the tax office and other entities out of there as that building continues to age.
And this was also the possible Office Max, right, in front of.
That's one of the facilities. We're looking at another one that's available in Dickinson.
Okay.
So Paul's working that out with us, and I think as we pursue next steps, get some direction on what the next pursuit will be and getting appraisals done and negotiating.
Well, the good thing about that one location will be there's not a lot of neighborhood right around it.
Right.
So we were looking at, I think what we had put in the budget is to continue exploring purchasing a facility and renovating it versus the new construction. I just asked for different pricings together for y'all.
So this price is largely unknown.
Well, the price, no, because this price for 9.9 would include the estimated purchase price of the property, in our opinion, right? So that would be all inclusive, purchasing and renovating.
So do we have to decide now, or just, can we?
We can continue to talk about it between now and putting it together for an order. I know, talking to Judge Henry, one thing we could bring down is just a true potential renovation cost, and we could probably use, with us trying to sell off like the Broadway piece of property and some others, we could probably use reserves to pay for the property and not have to have it on a bond issue to put that through that. So that would reduce that number significantly.
So just put the build-up cost on the bond, and then whatever land or building we purchase, we keep looking for the best deal,
And we can pay cash.
and then we pay cash for
Or use
that.
the property where you own.
Yeah, or use the property we already own, so. I like that idea. It seems like it's more cost-effective to do that, so.
I know we have a little bit of time left to decide on some things, but I think we really need to start hammering it down and getting some answers here pretty quick to know
Yeah,
what we're going for.
I think working with bond counsel, and I know our financial advisors here, in a perfect world, if we could get the order ready for special court by the end of next week, because our deadline is the 14th, so we're 2 weeks out.
Yeah.
So, and I know everyone's had meetings with, you know, everyone to discuss this with Brittany and with her team and Michael on the road and bridge stuff and drainage stuff, so I think we're trying to get to the finish line on some of this.
Okay, next.
That's it.
Okay.
What is what's the total, what we just kind of suggested, we just not voted, but suggested, what's the total of
On the facilities,
the facilities?
we're around 75 million total.
And 55 is just at one.
It would just be juvenile justice, correct?
Goes fast.
Okay, so I'll have Michael come up and. Sure.
Thank you, sir.
Here's a,
Thank you.
this is for the drainage and mobility projects. You've seen all of these projects in the previous workshop. Now we have called the list with priorities. And the first sheet here is just a summary of those projects. And for the drainage projects, there's a total of $36 million. And for the mobility or roads projects, there's a total of $74 million of projects. The drainage projects are primarily projects in the that improve the unincorporated part of Galveston County or have a regional purpose for different jurisdictions. And I can go into more detail if you'd like. On the mobility side, we've got the listing of the different cities here with an allocation of what those cities, what projects those would cost within those cities. We have, so there'd be a total of 36 million in drainage and 74 million in mobility.
Now, do we have a history with these different drainage entities and spending the money and spending it wisely, et cetera, et cetera?
We do have a relationship with the Consolidated Drainage District and Drainage District number 1.
But none of this is, we're partnering with the cities on this mobility stuff, not the drainage districts on it.
Now, on the drainage side, when you look at the siphon replacements with Drainage District number 1, for example, that has an impact beyond, you know, just those municipalities that they serve. That also has an impact on some of the folks who live in unincorporated West County as well.
Correct.
Which is why when Michael presented some of the projects that they put down there, we had listed a couple of those siphon replacements to assist some of those residents out there in West County. Similar to the top 4 projects on the drainage side, those are all the Bayshore communities in Precinct 1, which also Michael, from my understanding, is working with Betsy on resubmitting some grants for that. But we had done that a year prior and were denied and just missed out by pretty slim margin, right?
That's what I understand, a slim margin on the 4 projects.
So we're hopefully we're successful in getting at least one of those funded, which would then open up the availability if we needed to shift money around to another drainage project in the community.
So when we listed projects from all of the entities, did all of the drainage districts submit projects?
The 3 drainage districts did, right?
There are 3 drainage districts. The Drainage District number 2 submitted what they have a capital improvement plan without what I would consider a real project. It was a $24 million ask, and the project wasn't well defined. Speaking further with the Drainage District number 2, they had said that all of their ditches operate within banks. And so there's not a real project that they could bring forward that would really improve if you're within banks. So there wasn't a drainage district number 2 project that was viable.
They just wanted 24 million bucks.
Yeah.
And part of that $24 million was to replace culverts under the newly constructed I-45. And I don't think that was viable.
Well, what you're saying though, most importantly, is that all who wanted were considered.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All who wanted it were reasonable.
Well, I was saying,
Actually identified projects,
Yeah,
real projects.
not just the drainage districts, but also the cities.
Right.
So I know Michael presented this last time to the court. Y'all have met with Michael individually and discussed these projects. There's been no changes from those original meetings. A little different than the facility side, which is kind of a moving target as they get those numbers more defined. I think we wanted to present this to the court for one final overall review, and then just like we will on the facility side, if something comes up between now and us doing the special meeting to speak up and bring it to Michael's attention so it can be addressed. But in total, if you took a look at the drainage flow control projects of a little over 36 million, the mobility road projects of 74 million, noting that, you know, reserving $25 million for us to get something done with the San Luis Pass Bridge, which we talked about. You know, in total to bring our bond issue to a total bond issue of 185 million with the, if we did all the facility projects that we just discussed prior. Noting too, important what Sergio brought up with our financial advisor at last meeting is not all that debt would need to be engaged in 2025, so it would relieve our property tax burden even more so with the upcoming fiscal year, which would allow you guys to very comfortably continue reducing below the no new revenue rate, even taking on this new bond issue with approval of May. So I didn't know if there's any further discussion on these specific projects that you want to dive down into, because I know you've all seen them.
Questions? All right, that's it.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, there's nothing else, we're at 3:37.
Yeah.